Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. All right, today on the Develop Yourself podcast, I have a returning guest, a very special guest, Alex Lau, author of Keep Calm, Code On, a book that I love. Still reading that, actually. I keep it by my nightstand, and I pick it up every once in a while when I feel a little bit down. Alex came to me with a really great idea. He thought, we talk a lot about coding careers and things like that. We both obviously have strong opinions on what people should be doing in their careers. And he said, why don't we ask our respective audiences what they would like to know? So we did. We sourced some questions from you, mostly Alex, and we took some of the best ones, and we'd like to answer them for you here because we know that there's a lot of things people want to know about or have questions about that we don't necessarily know. So thanks for thinking of this idea, Alex, and thanks for joining me today to knock out these questions.
Yeah, thanks for having me. For the record, I didn't know that you had my book on your nightstand, so I feel like that's this nice little bond that we share now.
I do. It's one of those books I pick up because it's nice because you can read it chapter by chapter. It doesn't you don't have to read it all the way through. As a book, you can pick up little chapters and think some things I skip because I'm that's not really relevant to me, and some things this is really relevant to me. And I enjoy reading those things when I'm feeling a little down. And it's cool to know also the added benefit of knowing you, which is cool too. I'm this is a guy I actually know who actually went through some of the same things I'm going through. So very cool book. Yeah, definitely recommend it for anybody out there that's interested in a non-technical book about coding careers, which I think is increasingly more important nowadays.
Yeah. It's always weird to explain to people that it's a software development book without any actual code in it. But I actually really do enjoy hearing that you skip around in it as well, because I did write it with that intention of, for people that are more experienced or maybe have already experienced some of those lessons that I talk about in the book. I want it to be skippable. And so to hear that you're jumping around to different chapters, is delightful to me.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. A great book. Get a lot of mileage out of it. It's kind of like the Coding Career Handbook. I don't know if you're familiar with that book too, but that's a really good book.
I haven't read that one.
Kind of in a similar vein. It's definitely for more early career people, definitely earlier in their career. I'd say this one is better for people that probably are a couple years into their career. That's probably the time I would have had the best value out of this book. Now I find a lot of value in it. When I was just learning to code, it might have been a little out of my depth.
I like how you covered that on a previous podcast about different stages of your career and when it would be beneficial to read certain books, because I think that framing is really important. What you get out of books at different times in your career based on your experience make a huge difference.
Yeah. Imagine reading designing data intensive applications, fresh out of a boot camp or something like that. You'd be wait, what? Am I supposed to, is this how people talk in the industry?
Yeah.
Completely lost. You know what I mean? It'd be nuts.
Yeah. That's enough to make somebody second guess their career choice at that point. I feel like.
Exactly. That's a book that's not on my nightstand, but I am reading that one as well. So are you ready to do some of these questions? We can start off with the first one. These are straight from LinkedIn, hot off the press. And we have a pretty good question here. This is the big question that I think everybody wants to know. And I am curious about your take on this because everybody has a different opinion about the current job market. And people want to basically, how do I get a job in 2025? It's crazy because the job market, every indication appears that the job market is actually going in a positive direction. But if you look at most developers on LinkedIn and the general LinkedIn ecosphere, it looks like nobody's being hired ever. It feels like it's gloom and doom everywhere. At least that's what I read. Maybe that's just in my feed. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode. And I want to let you know that becoming a developer in 2025 is not going to look like becoming a developer in 2024. There is an overload of information, AI tools out there, so much conflicting social media BS that it's hard to understand what you really need to do. If you're interested in working with me and my partner Zubin in a very private, exclusive mentorship program where we teach you not just how to code, but how to reinvent yourself as a career changer and help you make a successful transition from your previous life into tech, we want to talk with you. This program is not easy, it is not short, but it is effective. If you want to schedule a talk directly with me or Zubin, just go to the show notes, parsity.io/inner-circle. Back to the show. So this person asked, what should they do to land a job in 2025 as a developer? Is it better to build a big project or send out a lot of job applications or basically build a project and just network? So it looks like the crux of the question is basically hey, I need to build something, but should I just be kind of praying and spraying, or should I be trying to network with people. What's your take on this?
So initially, I think that it's tempting to just jump right into like leaning all into one direction or the other and just say like, for both sides of this question they pose, they talk about having a project. Like I think writing that code and getting that experience is super important no matter what, right? Especially going through the exercise of practicing coding and practicing coding like in a live environment in front of somebody else, whether that's even just recording yourself or practicing in front of a friend that's non-technical.
Mhm.
But to get back to the actual crux of the question, like you had talked about, Brian, I think between sending out cold applications and networking, I personally lean way more into the networking side of it these days. Like the last couple of jobs that I've gotten have been because I've had warm intros. And I think that that is something that I kind of underappreciated earlier on in my career. And the thing that I've seen is that as I work with people and they get to know me and hopefully they have this positive experience from working with me, it becomes a lot
Yeah.
easier to get your foot in the door. And the more people you work with, the more your kind of network grows. And even just playing the game of knowing somebody, and even if it's not like, oh, you're a shoo-in at that company, to
Mhm.
even get to the point where you're past that top of the funnel, that initial screening for a resume, and just getting somebody to look at your resume because you have a warm intro or a lead at a company, I think that that alone is huge.
I like what you said, especially I like the fact that you talked about not just coding a project, which I think is to me table stakes. You have to have something to show people, especially I think if you're really early in your career. I feel like after the first job, this is increasingly less important because you can look back at your previous work and talk about it. But the idea or the action, the practice that you need to have of coding in front of a human is really important, I think, because you need to be prepared for interviews. But when it comes to actually getting the job, I've seen it, the pray and spray approach or the spray and pray approach, it does work for some people. Like I can't discount that. I used to use that approach, but now I feel like the AI fear, people were saying AI is going to take your job. And I'm like, not in the way that I think we think. It now I see the problem with AI is we have AI bots, people using AI agents to create their resumes or engage on LinkedIn. Then we have AI screening.
Yeah.
And we're creating this weird thing where AI is talking to AI and nobody seems to be winning in this battle. So I think that increasingly, like you said, like you've seen networking work for yourself, and I also discounted it too. And I see that as basically maybe the only way until we get over this weird phase, because I think that this is a losing game on both ends of the spectrum. I don't see companies getting better and better developers. Like I just don't. I've talked to too many, and I don't see like we don't have genius level developers at a scale that would make sense for this kind of weird filtering processes we have. And so we're getting mediocre developers in mediocre companies, but we're taking 6 times as long to get them there because of this silly process we have. So I think really the only way I can see to get around it is through networking. I got a quick crazy story that happened to me recently.
Yeah,
I got
let's hear it.
rejected 8 months ago from a job from AI. It just like auto rejected me.
Sure.
And I was going on Glassdoor and I was seeing that this was like everybody was getting rejected. And I thought this is silly. Like whatever. Screw the company. 8 months later, they hit me back, said, "Hey Brian, we made a mistake.
Wow.
We rejected way too many candidates. In fact, we didn't find one out of the 1,000 or whatever, how many ridiculous amount of people they had.
Sure.
So we feel bad. We've actually human reviewed them. We'd like to invite you back for an interview." And I thought, this is crazy, right? This is nuts. So luckily I knew a recruiter that kind of got me in through that door. She knew me from LinkedIn and actually reviewed it based on her, I guess, some relationship to me. And that started the interview. But could you imagine how many people are going through this that don't even know that they're just getting rejected because for no reason, no reason at all. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's a wild story.
That was wild.
I have to give them some props for like coming back and admitting that they made a mistake, right? Like that's not necessarily easy to do. And I think a lot of companies wouldn't have done that.
Right. Yeah. I definitely give them some credit for that. I think that was smart on their part, but it just made me wonder how wide scale is this problem now where you have like this much weird filtering from AI and stuff and people that can't get anywhere because they think they think something's wrong with my resume. Something's wrong with my project. When really it could be just something wrong, like fundamentally with the way you're applying in general. Maybe fundamentally applying for a job is just different, and maybe it will just be different in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that the wild thing is that we're still in the very early days of all this AI screening and applications and all the automation that comes along with that. And
Yeah.
I think it might be one of those things that where it gets worse before it gets better. And
Yeah.
I actually don't know of a good solution other than networking, or maybe like there's a way to kind of like crack that code on like the application side where you just happen to have the right things that the AI screeners on the recruiting side are looking for. But
Yeah.
that seems like a hard nut to crack and like a difficult problem to solve on its own. And even if you solve it, who knows if it'll change a couple months down the road or something like that.
Exactly. It is very interesting. And when we say networking, it's kind of one of those really nebulous words. Like, do you have like a process or do you have a way that you network to like make connections with people in genuine ways?
I think that the most effective strategy that I've had is I live in Austin, Texas, and they have a pretty good tech scene over there in general. So going to tech meetups and just meeting people, I actually never view it as like intentional networking for the sake of networking. I just view it as kind of organic. You're going there, you're looking to meet cool people, have some conversations, learn about new technologies, be open to exploring what other people are working on. And that's kind of worked out really well for me. I guess one time I had a little bit more luck with a bit of like cold networking or like more intentional outreach is a couple of years ago when I was looking to break into ed tech and start working with ed tech companies. I had done quite a bit of research for different companies that were in that space because it's like a little bit more of a niche domain, I would say. And I kept just like reading all these articles about different ed tech companies and like the challenges they were facing, things like that, just trying to do as much research as possible. And one thing that I did was actually send out cold emails to companies that weren't hiring, but I saw were on like these lists of best places to work, things like that. And just try to get on their radar. Like my first step would be to look on LinkedIn and see if I had any mutual connections, see if I could get a warm intro at these places. But for the ones that I didn't, I would just send a cold email and be like, hey, this is my resume. I know you're not hiring right now, but if you have any engineering spots that are going to open up, I'd love to hear about them and love to talk to somebody on the team, even in the meantime, or when those spots open up. And that just gets you on their radar and shows that you have initiative, right? And actually the first job that I got in ed tech was because I did that. And so that I feel like it's just one other thing that sets you apart, right? And in this case, it was something that showed that I had initiative behind it. And I think there's very little downside to doing that other than you have to invest time and energy, right? But again, I think the way that I view a lot of things with interviewing, especially trying to break through that top of the funnel past the resume screening process, because in many ways it feels like a lottery if your resume is even chosen in the first place, right? And I say this as somebody with 15 plus years of experience. And I think the name of the game is just trying to like break through that noise and be memorable and to like have something that companies can kind of like latch on to and identify you with.
Man, that's a really good one because there's a whole generation of people. Like my son is 18. I know a lot of the coders I speak to, they're in their early 20s, even like maybe, And I think most of them have never even thought of the idea that to reach out via email to a company. I think all they know is LinkedIn. When we were younger, I mean, I'm speaking for you as if maybe we're close in age, but there, I mean, there was more than LinkedIn. It wasn't really a LinkedIn at one point. That didn't exist. So we didn't, that's still a newish tool in many ways. Now it feels like it's the only tool to use, but you're right. You need to start doing, that's a really good reminder for myself too, actually. I'm like, I forgot about doing that kind of stuff. You're right. Cause that's what we all kind of did back in the days, or we go physically to the location and just ask these questions like, hey, are you hiring? Where's an application, or who can I speak to in this department? And that kind of thing used to work. And I think it still can, even in this day and age, especially now because everybody is trying to use AI or take a faster route. Really, really good point.
Yeah.
You had a question from your wife.
Yes.
Which is pretty cool. I saw the question. I thought, what a great question. And I didn't know it was from your wife. And this is a good one. And so she's a designer and she works with engineering and product. Typical, right? Most designers do.
Yep.
And she says, while learning to program throughout your career, how important is it to also familiarize yourself with cross-functional aspects of the software development process, like product and strategy? I mean, product and design, because product and design are integral parts of any tech organization, and people that might not understand what they do, like design does kind of what it sounds like. A lot of times they'll create the user interfaces, the user experience. Product will kind of decide the direction of the product, kind of like what's being built and why, and tracking why, and engineering will typically be involved in both those processes. But how important is it, do you think, that a developer be kind of familiar with these things, and how much? Like, do you need a developer that's also a designer and a product person, or
Yeah.
where do they draw the line?
Yeah. And I really like that last part of the question of like, how deep can you go into this like idea? I'm kind of mulling over the idea in the back of my mind. Like, is there a spot that's like, too far into it? Like, if you could theoretically just be equally awesome as a developer, and as a designer as well, like, would you want to do that? And as a product manager, right? I guess in theory, probably. I don't know. I think for this one, it's certainly one that if you had asked me right out of college as I was getting my first job, I would have answered it much differently, and maybe not for the better. I probably would have said, oh, I'm an engineer. My focus is coding. It's everybody else's job to like get me the specs, have that stuff in place. And if they're not doing that, that's on them. That's not on me. And now I feel kind of completely the opposite. And the one thing that really affected my answer for this is that I had a role for probably about 6 months where I was working at a small startup, and I was a hybrid engineer and product manager. So I was acting as like the product manager on the team, but also still writing code. And
I think you told me about this last week.
yeah, I
That's
think
so
we
cool.
talked about this.
That's a very cool transition.
And the big takeaway that I got out of the many lessons I learned during that time was that as a product manager, I'd be going and checking on status updates with engineers on our team. And I'd be like, hey, how far along is this feature? And they would sometimes reply to me like, oh, actually, this, I'm a little behind because I have this one hang up on the way that this spec is written, or I'm trying to like accommodate this design or something like that. And I would kind of feel both glad that I asked, but also a sense of remorse that I didn't ask sooner, because a lot of that time I would be like, oh, actually, like that part's fine. Like, let's put it all together, or we can like get it to the next sprint. Like, I don't want this to be a blocker for you, or, if you've written 80% of this feature and you're just spending that last 20% trying to get this one aspect of it correct that is kind of inconsequential or can be delayed or whatever, as a product manager and focusing on delivering value. And I think that by me going through that experience, I was able to empathize a lot more with working with other product managers in the future, because I could see myself answering that same question when other product managers would do that same thing, where they'd be doing the status update and be like, oh yeah, this design, this part of it is like holding me back. Whereas now I will kind of identify when there's a roadblock that may or may not be consequential, or like I want to have that discussion of, hey, this thing is harder than we thought. Is it worth investing the time into it, or should we punt and do it a different way, or forego it altogether, or handle it next sprint? And I think that really is an example of being able to walk in the path of another person's shoes, in this case, a product manager, and like going through that experience made me a more effective, well-rounded, empathetic developer. And I can totally see that same thing if I'm not good at design, but I feel like if I
me neither.
Did a career change and like did a stint as a designer for a year or two, I would learn those same kinds of lessons, right? And so even the example I just talked about, like this meta example of, hey, this thing's harder to do. Let's have this conversation about whether it's worth it or not. Like, I think that alone is worth its weight in gold. And like, it's easier said than done a lot of time, especially for me, where I'm like, oh, this is a spec I'm given, I want to try to do it. Or like, I get kind of obsessed with it, and I'm like, oh, I have to do it, even though maybe I don't, right? Better just conversation.
That's cool that you had that experience to go on the other side, because there's so much like tension, I feel like, between product and engineering, and sometimes engineering and design too, when they're all like super important. I mean, I've been at a couple places where I'd say product was, definitely on a pedestal, and engineering was not. And I've seen places where engineering is on a pedestal and product might not be, or design. And so there's this sometimes conflict, but I'd say I like echo what you said too. I feel like you should have an opinion, and you should feel some way about a little bit of each aspect. Because I don't think it's enough as a developer, especially the smaller the company, the more important this is, to have an opinion on the product direction and the design, because I think that everybody in a good organization wants to build the best thing. And if you
Right.
get something that looks weird and you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense, and product says, let's build this thing, you're like, that doesn't make sense. And you're just kind of becoming like a bit of a code monkey and just saying,
Yep.
cool, you just tell me exactly what to do and I will code it up exactly as you want it. And you have zero opinion on it. That could probably work at a really big organization. And that might be what they want at a larger organization. In some level, they might not want you to always push back. But I think at most companies, you do want a little bit of healthy discussion and to understand the motivations of each team in some way. I don't think it's enough to just get handed a design and a thing from product and just say, I'll do this, hell or high water, time be damned, or whether,
Yeah.
have an opinion on some stuff. I mean, I'm a terrible designer myself. I would never want to design anything, but I do when I see things like, that seems a little weird to me. Just, it could be as simple as that, like, oh, this seems a little odd to me. Like, any reason why we're doing that? And they could say, yeah, because of this. And that could be the end of the conversation. Or it could be like, oh, you know what? I never thought of that. And it could lead to a better design or something like that. On to the next question we have here. This person's asking, this is an interesting question because if you've been in software for a while or just, pre-pandemic, you've seen how things have changed. And this person asked, how did the pandemic affect the way you worked? He said, it's crazy to see how it's changed people's career trajectories in business operations. So I'm curious, like, what do you think about this, and how did it affect you in your career in any way, if so?
The biggest thing that comes to mind for pretty much every software developer and even non-software development jobs is working remotely, right?
Yeah. Huge.
Because for me personally, I was working in person from an office, and then it was this very abrupt change to working remotely. Mm-hmm. And when I think about that, I think about all the things that come along with that, right? Like, I feel like my take on working remotely is that it like amplifies the skills and your tendencies that you already have. Like, if you're somebody who's good at getting into flow state, like, working from home, like, really amplifies that. But if you're somebody who can be easily distracted, working from home can be very tempting, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, maybe I'll just go do the laundry right now, or like take care of X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And I think that, in both those regards, even if it's something that's not your natural tendency, like, it's just more to kind of look out for, like, there's times when I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I should try to like really just buckle down or like do whatever I need to do, whether that be like put on headphones and turn on noise canceling, or, move to a different room or location, or even work from a coffee shop or something, just to kind of make sure that I'm in that right mental space. Oh, yeah. The other thing that I think comes along with working remotely is a change that's certainly for the better, where it's more focused on delivering value rather than just of hours. Like, it's when you're working, it's easy to kind of fall into this trap of like,
I'm here.
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna prove my worth by being around a lot, and that's something that's kind of tangible that other people on the team can see. But I mean, as I personally experienced, like, that can also lead you astray, and even paradoxically, you reach this point where you're working really hard, but you're already burnt out, and the quality of what you deliver isn't as good. And I think that both from initially a very purposeful level, and then now at more of a subconscious level, like, I'm not as concerned with writing as much code as possible, so much as I am trying to deliver as much value as possible. And like, some days that's easier than others. Like, it feels good to ship a lot of code, right? But I don't know, maybe it's the companies that I've been working at recently, or maybe it's just a shift mentally as well, or maybe some combination of these two things. But at the companies that I've worked at since the pandemic, they've all been very data-driven and experimental. Just also very helpful when it comes to thinking about how effective something is, because it gives you data to point at where you're like, oh, this experiment that we tried, where we like redesigned this page, wasn't effective, or was effective.
Did it work or not? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that, like, who cares if you're writing more code or not for that? Like, the thing that you want is to get to that result. And so, like, just writing a lot of code isn't going to guarantee that you get there, right? In fact, it might even be detrimental in a lot of ways if you're writing too much code and getting too involved in this thing. So, yeah, I don't know. What's your thought on this one?
Yeah, that's a interesting one, because I feel a lot of what you felt. Like, I'm in the Bay Area, the work from home capital of the world, apparently, something like that. And but I never really worked from home until the pandemic. I worked at places where I had to negotiate whether I could work from home, and I did not work from home for the first few years in my career. And even when I first was able to work from home, I sucked at it. I was like overwhelmed. I felt really nervous. I felt self-conscious. I felt, how do people know that I'm working? You know, I was pretty junior at the time, and I just didn't feel good about working from home. So I'd go to the office, I don't know what was wrong with me. Just a weird person, which I'm curious, like, how did you learn to work from home? Did it come natural to you, or did you have to kind of learn how to do it as well?
I guess I was pretty far along in my career at that point. So having that good baseline definitely helped. I'm trying to think of if there's like anything that I think, again, just trying to get into flow state and remove distractions were the big things for me.
Big one.
When you say you sucked at working from home, like what specifically did like to mind?
I was like, I went the pattern of overworking, because like I have all this time at home now. I'm just going to like work nonstop. I got to get this feature out. I don't know what this person means when they said this. I'm too afraid to ask and clarify. I don't know how to update people on what I'm doing. Who do I ask for help? I'm too embarrassed to say this in a public channel. And so I was just in my little code hole all day long and just trying to get things done as fast as possible. And, having like, oh my God, I think I'm going to be late on this. I think I'm going to be late on this. And I remember the CTO, it was like a company of a few people. He's like, yeah, there's no rush on that. And I'm thinking, if I was just in the office, I could have turned over and asked him this question. And instead, I'm wrestling in my own head with this non-existent problem, thinking that he wants this immediately without clarifying. It was all my fault. It was totally not anybody else's fault. I didn't realize that I had to over communicate as a person on a remote team. And I think most people don't think about that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that one up, because I was actually thinking about this one before we jumped on this call. And that was one thing that I meant to bring up, is that over communication or erring on the side of over communication becomes really important when you're in a remote environment.
Yeah.
For that exact reason that you're talking about. Like it's easy to read between the lines, and like, especially over text or, PR comments or whatever, like something can have a very different meaning or very different interpretation from what the author initially thought, whether that be for a message or PR comment or whatever. And one thing that I try to be very wary of is when we hit, I like to refer to it as like Zoom velocity, where it's like, we're at this point where we've been talking a lot, and I don't see us wrapping up this conversation quickly. Whereas if we just hop on a call real quick, we'll have a lot better communication.
I love that term.
Maybe it'll catch on.
Yeah, I like it.
The other thing I would say is it's interesting to hear you talk about working too much and not having this clear, well, I'm going to say this on your behalf. You can either agree or disagree or clarify, but like not having this distinction of work life and personal life, right? When you have that commute that kind of separates you from the different worlds, like it can really easily blend together. And that also kind of plays into what I was talking about before, where working from home kind of exaggerates your natural tendencies, right? If you were somebody who really wanted to just work a lot and improve yourself, like it becomes harder to maintain that balance when you don't have that natural forcing function of going home and like separating that mentally.
Exactly. Yeah, that was totally me. And I've gotten much better over the years, which kind of leads me to how it's really helped my career trajectory, actually. I saw my career basically explode because we were all fully remote. It was my first fully remote job in the pandemic, that my influence was actually easier to expand, right? Because a video in a Zoom channel or a video in a Slack channel can reach a ton of people. You can't do that so easily in person at all. So the switch to remote helped me quickly go from senior into like lead into manager. And then, through a bunch of luck and some weird circumstances, I got to senior engineering manager, which is not really an accurate title, but it was my official title. But I went really quickly through the ranks because I was just showing up and just being like ever present on like Slack and things like that and talking to the right people, which you can't do as easily in person. If you're at an organization, the people that you're physically close to, and there's even studies that prove this, if you're close to like a high performing engineer or somebody, you're going to be higher performing, more statistically likely to be higher performing. Wow. If you're sitting next to a lower performing person, you're statistically more likely to be lower performing based on just your proximity, your physical proximity.
Wow,
Online, all
that's
these barriers in
fascinating.
place. Isn't that crazy? I was like shocked to read this. I'm like, what?
I'm going through and thinking through all my seating charts now at different companies and trying to correlate to see how my performance went as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess just like a theoretical level, that makes
Yeah.
sense in the same way that they talk about how you're the average of your 5 closest friends, right? You just
Yeah.
naturally
Yeah.
kind of, I mean, I'll use the term through osmosis, but you naturally kind of pick up on the tendencies that people that you're around frequently also.
Yeah, that's a good one. And who knows? I mean, this is a study I read about, and I just know from personal experience. When I sat next to really high performing people, what I consider high performing people, and I could just lean over and say, "Hey, man, what do you think
Yeah.
about what I wrote here?" Or they
Yeah.
say, "Hey, can you read this? Can you review this PR for me?" That was really helpful. So in some ways, after the pandemic, things have also just changed so dramatically that now everybody, it's like remote. It's remote first for most software developers, and I do miss those times when I could just peek over at what somebody's doing and have those natural conversations, which are harder to have via Slack. And I do think a lot of engineers kind of miss out on that, especially if you're newer, that you don't get that easy feedback that you naturally get into in an office. So pros and
Yeah.
cons, obviously.
Yeah. And that's a really good point as well. I think that the relationships that I have with my coworkers have changed a lot. And it's, especially when you're fully remote, it's hard to kind of foster those social interactions. Like you can do like scheduled fun hangouts or like
Yeah, right. Yeah.
games or something. And I think that that can be effective to a smaller extent. And it's nice to just have that as something that's better than nothing. But it's a very fine line too, where the second that it kind of like has this smell about it of like, oh, this is a forced thing that your company
Oh my
is
God. Yeah.
making, like it has the exact opposite
Not
effect,
into it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It has to be kind of like employee led and driven. But even then, like there's really nothing that replaces that face-to-face interaction that you get with employees. And that's one thing that I'm really appreciative of now is that the company I currently work for, one thing that they prioritize is having quarterly get-togethers for
That's important. Yeah.
all the teams. And that, I mean, again, it just makes it so much different for getting to know somebody on a personal level.
100%. We keep forgetting, or maybe we're trying to avoid this fact. We are humans. We need like face-to-face interaction. It's just not the same. Like people need to be around people. We're just big bags of flesh. We're not that far removed from our ancestors, which we have like these, what somebody said, like we have Neanderthal instincts and like this super powered brain. But at our core, we crave this human face-to-face interaction. We really need it to like to feel close to somebody.
Yeah.
Now to one of my favorite questions, the one I want to ask you. I sucked at negotiations. I never negotiated for the first 3 to 5 years of my career, basically. I just didn't negotiate, didn't know how to do it. And then I learned how by being forced to negotiate, essentially, when I had some competing offers. And I was like, I have competing offers and I was forced to negotiate. How do you negotiate? Do you negotiate? If so, how do you do it? How do you say, give me more money? You get a job offer and you say, hey, you know what? I want more money. How do you do this?
Sure. I'll preface this with I don't consider myself an expert at negotiation, but it is something that I've certainly learned to embrace and appreciate. I think that one thing that I would caveat this whole conversation with is that I think there's better times and worse times in your career to negotiate. Like I think that first and foremost, just getting your foot in the door and getting that first job is like a time when you probably want to have the least risk tolerance. So like if you view negotiation as like a form of risk and you're afraid that like, oh, if I ask for X, Y, and Z, like if I try to negotiate salary, I'm afraid they're going to withdraw an offer, which I think is very unlikely to happen, especially if you're doing it actfully and doing it in reason, not asking for 3 or 4 times the salary they're offering.
There you go. Yeah. Right.
Some percentage that you've researched and have some, articulate backing to. Like, I think it's just part of the game. Right. And for a long time, I avoided it as well because I was just too nervous to do it. And my risk tolerance was like ultra low where I didn't.
Okay.
Anytime I was given a job offer, I was just, yes, I'll take it.
Yeah,
right.
Give it to me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think part of it is having more jobs over time. Part of it's having competing offers. And part of it's really just like learning that it is like, it's not offensive to negotiate. It's like literally part of this process, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And one way that I thought it was easier to get into negotiation was to ask for things that aren't necessarily salary related. So rather than saying,
Mhm.
oh, like trying to negotiate just for salary, you can negotiate for things like an education budget, which is, if you get another $1,000 for an education budget, and you use it, that's essentially getting $1,000 raise, which is awesome, right?
For sure.
Or negotiating for vacation time.
Oh, vacation, work from home. Yeah.
Yeah,
All sorts of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, an office setup stipend, something like
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
ways to kind of dip your toe in the water. There are also ways that I think are less, I say that companies are unlikely to be offended, but there are places out there or people out there that might be offended if you pass a certain threshold of what you're asking for. But
This is
again,
very true. Yes.
yeah, if you're doing it tactfully, I think it's very unlikely. And even if it does happen, it's like kind of, do you even want to work there in the first place? Right. Which is why I think that
Good point.
the reason I caveat everything with you can get your first job and then like start entertaining, negotiating more is because I just think that baseline is super important. And then like trying to build on it afterwards is where I think you're more likely to be comfortable. And if you already have a job and then you're interviewing for another job, you probably have a higher risk tolerance, right? It's easier to get another job when you already have one and you're maybe in the position to be more picky or try to ask for more. But the reason I think negotiation is so important is because the amount of time that you put in to just learning the basics of it, whether that be like going and watch it, if you don't know anything about negotiation and you go and watch a 10-minute YouTube video about negotiation, and it's able to help you get another $1,000 education budget, let's say, time, the time that you put in versus the value you got out of that is enormous, right? And it's not even for this contrived example that I'm giving. It's for anything. Like if you're able to raise your base salary and then do that at your next role and your next role, like each time you do that, you're just building a higher base for future earnings as well.
100. Yeah. That's a really big one. You are going to pay or reap the rewards of that initial negotiation for years to come, especially if it's a company where you want to be for a long time.
Yeah.
I kind of think that you owe it to yourself and the company actually to negotiate, because if you really like the company and they're coming in at a lower range, you're like, man, I don't want to leave here. Like, I want to stay here for a long time. Sometimes that's the approach I'll use if I'm being sincere, if I really do, or maybe if I don't. But I'm like, I want to get the best deal for myself because I don't want to have to look around later, right? I want to stay here for a while. But what you said about the first job too, I mostly agree. I think that you're right. Like, it can feel really, really uncomfortable. And I have been now on the other side of the table where I've worked with HR and as a manager to help hire people and work out negotiations and packages. And what I saw kind of shocked me because we had a range and we always had to start at the lower range. Like, we never could start at the highest because we expected people, the HR person, like, you never, ever offer the highest part of the range. Come in around here. Here's what you're supposed to say. Here's what you can offer them at first. So they tell me, I go back to them and say, we want to offer you the job. Here's the range. When people said, I'll take it, I felt bad for them. Because I'm like, if you had just said, hey, I'm hoping we can get a little higher. Now, when people came back and said, I want double, then that was like almost like this shows a clear lack of like thinking or sincerity on your part. And I think the conversation's over actually at that point. You're right. So that can really backfire on you if you say, it's a $100,000 job. I want $200,000.
Right.
No, get out of here. You know what I'm saying? Because like, what if I do hire you? What if you do take it? Like, you're not going to stay, obviously, if that was your expectation.
Sure.
But I did feel terrible for people, especially newer people or even not newer people. And I'd offer them a salary and they just take it and they didn't negotiate. I'm like, you left $10,000 to $20,000 on the table. And I can't say anything. I'd get fired if I told them that. It was kind of sad.
Yeah. Yeah. That's bittersweet, right? Or not even bittersweet. Just that, right? In that case.
Yeah, it's weird, the morality in that one too. I'm like, how moral is it? I always felt weird, like, you don't even know the game's being played and know the game is there. It's hard. So yeah, even anything, you're right, like a 10-minute video on YouTube, or maybe just us talking about this will hopefully encourage some people to actually go out there and realize there is a game being played. And some companies are playing it less, but the majority of companies do play this game. And you should be aware that it's out there, I guess, at the very
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. And I think that most of the time it doesn't hurt to at least ask, or, if you're just being tactful about it, there's nothing wrong with doing negotiation.
Yeah. Yeah. Within reason for sure. And also, yeah, it's not always about money. I've remember negotiating. I said, hey, I really need to work home 2 days a week. And they're like, okay, well, we can make that happen for you. I'm like, cool. Thank God. Cause I live like 45 minutes away from San Francisco.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is going to suck to get in here, like, 5 days a week. Last question, which I think is actually from you. Oh, the tables have turned. Holy
yeah.
shit.
So one thing I'm wondering about, Brian, is you're not only a career changer, but you've had a lot of different roles within kind of the realm of software development. So like within this realm of software development and the different roles and positions that you've had, how long does it take you to become comfortable in a new role? Like say from going from being an individual contributor to a manager, like how long did it take you to be comfortable, like as a manager, like as the owner of Varsity? Like how do you go about thinking about those kinds of things, or like starting a new role? Like what kinds of things are you optimizing for?
Oof, that's a great one, because I'm kind of in it right now. Again, I went to a new company this year, and I'm 6 months into the role, and I was freaking out. Honestly, I freaked out when I acquired Varsity. I had a really stressful time. Every time I've done this, as you know too, right? I mean, are you pretty stressed out too when you start a new role? Like, do you have that feeling,
Yeah.
that overwhelming feeling of like, I'm not going to make it?
Particularly if it's new technologies. If I can't just hit the ground, if it's like joining a company that's using Ruby on Rails, which I know pretty well, tends to have a lot of conventions, I can like start making meaningful, impactful contributions right away. That helps a lot. But even then, I still like, I can't help but have this sense of apprehension.
Oh my God, yeah. And I've felt that enough times now, because I've switched around so much, that I'm used to it. That I'm like, okay, this is going to suck. I'm going to go through these emotions. I'm going to go through these stages of, not grief, but whatever you want to call it.
Stages of onboarding.
Stages of onboarding, where I feel like they made a mistake. I'm going to get fired. Yep. I'm completely lost here. How am I going to contribute here? What do they expect? Am I meeting their expectations? Why am I not doing as good as I want to do? And I understand that these emotions will play out in my head. Same thing when I acquired the Varsity as a business. I'm like, okay, the business runs. Why is it not running better? What have I done wrong? People don't, oh, somebody didn't like this, or I have a negative comment. Oh my God, things are falling apart. And I talked to my buddy Zubin, who actually I'm partnering with through Varsity now. And he's the guy called up when I was starting this new job. I said, oh, dude, I'm like overwhelmed. Like between the business, I got laid off this year. Now I'm starting this new job. It's just too much to handle. You know what I mean? I'm like debating whether I should go to another place or whatever. He's like, listen, it's like, you're going to feel like an idiot for 90 days at a minimum. Just get used to it. In 90 days, you're going to feel stupid. But now I do this process, which I've done at every place, where I write out, what do I know? What do I think I should know? What are some things I'm aware of my gaps? And then I kind of at least have some plan, because it's not enough for me to just go on any job, especially when I'm from like IC to manager. And I'm like, okay, expectations are different now. So I'm back at this IC role. I'm a senior engineer at a startup. Expectations are different now. Again, what are they? So one, I just try to get clear on what they are. What do I not know at all? And then make a kind of a roadmap from there. And I realized that it's going to take, for me, probably, I'd say about a year. Feel like I feel confident. And then I know they're going to go through those fluctuations, those little inflection points where something goes wrong or something goes right, or promotion happens, or these places where you begin to question your worth again. At least for me, I feel like this is a common pattern. I've kind of come to accept it, but yeah, I think that's kind of the sad part. It's kind of fun though too. I look at it a bit as like, okay, well, this is part of growing, right? Like you grow and you have these not so fun moments, and then you come out of them and say, wow, this is crazy. Now look at what I've done, and now I feel more confident here. And I realized that just switching around too much is not good either. Like you don't want to say, well, this feels uncomfortable, let me just go out of here. That's not a good thing. You want to sit through that suck, in my opinion. But am I just neurotic, or is this you too?
No, I would say that the process, the emotional roller coaster that you've described, is exactly how I felt in every job I've ever had. Even ones where I've been like writing code right away and like features and delivering value and like just feeling good, even getting positive feedback from my manager. Like I still feel that way. I can't help but have like, I almost think that there's this confidence that comes from no other factor but a sense of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you've been in a role and you've kind of
Uh-huh.
seen things and you've experienced it for long enough, then naturally you'll kind of start to calm down. But until you get to that point, like, yeah, it's just hard. And I applaud you for being open and honest about it, because I think that it's probably really valuable for anybody else who's out there and maybe just like switching for their first or second time and feeling that same emotional roller coaster.
That's so funny, dude. I mean, I'm glad that you said that as well, because sometimes like I don't know, Mike. Does anybody else feel like a total idiot for a while when they started job? Like I feel like, did they make a mistake? That's the worst feeling. Like, did I somehow sneak through the cracks here again?
Sure.
After I
Yeah.
snuck through enough cracks, I realized it's probably in my head, because like, you can't sneak this many times.
Nobody's this good. Like, if anything, I'm
Nobody's
just
this
impressed
good.
with myself for sneaking.
Yeah. I'm like,
This
geez, I got to
point.
be at least good at just sneaking in places at this point. Yeah, for sure.
The other thing that I like that you talk about is like embracing the suck. And I think that the times that I've truly grown and just been proud of the changes that I've gone through in life, whether that be in self-development or anything else, like public speaking, for example, like you have to have those darker periods in order to get to the good parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think about the times that you've grown, it's not just like, oh, I started learning software development and I was amazing at it. And then I was great at it. Oh, it's like, first of all, it's hopefully unlikely to happen. I mean, I know there's smart people out there, but then would you look back on that and be like, that's a time that I've grown and been proud?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, totally. It's like I always use the analogy of like lifting weights. It's like when you want to build muscle or lose weight or anything, you have to go through that period of like exertion, and you're going to tear some muscle fiber in order for the fiber to grow back larger. Like that's a fundamental level of how muscle grows. Same thing for a human being. It's like people always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not in the wrong room. And I'm like, yeah, it's true. It sounds trite. It sounds a little, corny, but it's totally true, and easier said than done. But if you can do it, like, I think that's the cheat code, is like, how long can you sit in uncomfortability? The longer you can sit with it and then grow from it, I think that is the ultimate cheat code. Because if not, you could find yourself at a company where you're the best developer and just coasting along for, 10, 20 years until you find yourself at the mercy of the market and realize, oh no, now that comfortability has a true price that I've just paid in my career, and which I've seen happen to a few people, which sucks,
Yeah.
Pay now or pay later.
Yeah, I do think that the cheat code definitely applies to like a lot of different areas of life. And it's also kind of interesting because like if you're naturally not good at something, that's typically where you can get the quickest gains fastest. I'm really terrible at public speaking, and then I just go and, go to a handful of different classes. Like I'll see huge gains because I suck at it, right? If I'm already good at it, it's going to take a lot longer for me to reach that next level because you've already kind of naturally hit this plateau in your skill set.
That's such a good way to frame it. That's funny because you're right. If you suck at something, you immediately are going to see those gains just from just a little bit of exertion.
Yeah,
really
but
good point to make.
At the same time, it's tough to embrace the things that you suck, right?
This is why most people just won't do that. But hopefully we've inspired or kind of encouraged people to do that. Alex, I can't thank you enough for having the idea to do this pod, and I sincerely enjoyed the conversation. Thanks again.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. And where can people find you online?
So you can find me on LinkedIn or on my book's website, keepcalmandcodeon.com. There's a contact page on there. I love hearing from people that have read it, and even if you have questions about it, just generally helping out people grow in software development. So if you're listening to this, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, Alex is a sincere and like genuine dude. So yeah, he's the kind of person that you want to reach out to and talk to, because you don't meet a lot of people like that. So very kind of you to offer that. Yeah. Thanks again, and can't wait to have you on again.
Thanks for having me, Brian. See you later.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.